before we welcome our next speaker, enjoy this quick commercial from our sponsor, Corrigo.
You're great at managing tasks, but with the right technology and the right intelligence, you could be a leader. Meet Corrigo, the intelligence-driven platform that's revolutionizing facilities management. For years, facilities managers have had to deal with inefficient, outdated systems, forcing you to spend your workweek patching leaks and wrestling with repetitive work orders. Do more in your workday with Corrigo. How? Corrigo is your secret weapon for better facilities management, combining artificial intelligence, business intelligence, and human intelligence for a custom experience that supports your key objectives. So you can streamline communications, connect with trusted partners, maximize your assets, and a whole lot more. Corrigo is your one-stop solution to simplify task management, boost your impact, and drive bottom-line value. Powered by collective industry insights, easy automation, and predictive decision-making, you can become even better at your job, now and for years to come. See how Corrigo can make you a facilities management visionary. Schedule your demo today.
Hello and welcome to RETCON. I hope you're having an awesome time so far. Our next session is titled Building Management Systems, Tech Strategies that are Innovating Property Management. Please join me in welcoming our panelists to the virtual stage.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is James Sharon. I'm the producer here at RETCON. I'm super excited to be moderating this panel. I'll go ahead and let everybody introduce themselves.
How are you? I'm CJ Edmonds. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of SmartRent. We're an enterprise software platform managing smart home technology for multifamily and single-family housing.
Hello, I'm Raymond Van Beveren, Senior Vice President of Construction and Facilities at Pinnacle, and we're a property management company of approximately 175,000 units nationwide.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Sallee. I'm with Motili. We're an HVAC service provider for multifamily and commercial buildings, and we use a technology platform to be really effective and efficient.
Hello, I'm Mike Mulloy with the NRP Group. We are a multifamily developer, builder, and manager of approximately 23,000 units nationwide.
Great. Well, let's jump right in. We all know resident communications have become essential in the building management and resident experience. How has technology impacted your ability to communicate with residents?
I'll jump in first, right? So yeah, I think it's obviously changed a lot in the past. From the past, and I remember when I started my career, it used to be who would get chosen to pass out the notices to every resident on the front door. And we're like, when we saw the printer, the copier start running those notices, everyone used to run away because no one wanted to walk every unit in a couple of hours. So obviously it's changed a lot from the communication. Now, we use it to communicate through residents. Have you paid your rent? We do it, and we'll talk a little bit probably more about all the things we can do with it. But through rent payments, through kind of notifying them of maintenance for order requests, and then communicating kind of back and forth. Email blasts as there's an emergency. I mean, we had an incident, obviously, with some hurricanes coming through Florida last month. We were able to, hey, please remove your furniture off your balconies and just things like that. So obviously, a lot of communication can now be done through email blasts, text messaging, many different ways to communicate. And I would say our residents have gotten smarter and now have smartphones, and their ability to receive this has always been a kind of how many people can really receive these messages. So that's improved drastically as well. So the answer is a lot.
Yeah, I would also add to that. I mean, the use of social media as well, online resident portals as well as, we're adopting that more and more. So I think, it's much easier to get information out quickly, and whatever the message may be, it's just much easier process, much streamlined process.
I'll throw a note in there. When you think about residents, first they have to become residents. And so when you talk about the prospect phase and helping residents tour properties, with the pandemic this year, it's really accelerated the use of self-guided tour technologies. And there's a few of us out there that do that, but it's communicating with your residents before they are. It's giving them the opportunity to tour a property when they want to, by themselves, sit in the unit. Some of our customers are even setting up like food and beverages in the fridge to just let them have that experience of being in the apartment, and maybe putting video up there if they want to learn more about the apartment. But it's really just giving them that opportunity before they become residents to tour the property how they want to. So you start the experience there.
CJ, quick, I'm sorry, James, I'm gonna ask a question here, but CJ, have you seen that, because you guys deal with it a lot, that, now that, I mean, we talked about it when we got on camera, right? That we're more comfortable in Zooms or Teams meetings, that the ability for residents now, they're a lot more comfortable doing things virtually because of the pandemic. And so that makes that communication even easier because they're more accepting to it.
Yeah, and it's across all demographics too. You kind of think about it's the young kids, that 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that want it, but it's really across the board. And we were already doing tests with UDR back in Q4 2019 on if people wanted to do self-guided tours, if they wanted to tour on their own. And we brought in people for tours, and then they had the option tour by yourself or tour with a salesperson. 85% pick tour by themselves. And this is in November last year, so pre-pandemic. So with the pandemic, it fully accelerated. And I think I was looking at our dashboard, we have 1,382 properties live with self-guided tours around the country. So it's something that everybody needs to do and give that option to, for sure.
Yeah, we see the resident communication and technology on the dispatch side. So we're responding to work orders routinely, and we use it to facilitate transparent handshakes between the building, the property manager, the contractor, and the resident. So we never have a situation where a contractor is scheduling with a resident, but the technology handles that interconnection and that handshake, so that the resident just gets an SMS and says, "Hey, schedule," and they can pick their schedule, and then that negotiates and authorizes with our contractor network. So we use it to streamline and create transparent communications, but also not requiring subcontractors to talk to residents and so on and so forth.
I mean, I think it's been amazing, right? From during the pandemic, our ability to communicate with it was really easy to shut down our office and make that decision. I think we initially panicked with like, oh no, we can't have people in our offices. But because of this technology that we've kind of been doing for the last couple of years, and now really forcing our hands to do it even more, it's made the decision to shut down our offices because we can communicate with our residents or future residents, to CJ's point, a lot easier. And as we're still not out of it, and we're seeing kind of an uptick right now, we're having to make those decisions every day, but they're easier to make now that we know we can still run our business because of all this technology we have.
That's great. Well, diving more into maintenance, it's maybe not always our favorite conversation. One of the most common conversations with residents does involve maintenance. So how has technology improved your ability to provide exceptional service to your residents?
I mean, I can jump in here as a maintenance provider and maintenance service provider. Our technology stack enables us to connect over 2,000 points of brick and mortar distribution, over 50,000 individual contractors across a building portfolio and service provider network that is coast to coast. And so our ability to manage our services at scale for our clients is what really has set us apart. And I think in COVID, where we see CDC requirements and contractor requirements and entry requirements changing on almost an hourly basis, we're able to roll that out in mass across the contractor network and facilitate consistency in work. As you can see, the building behind me here, we did 400 system changeouts in several weeks. In a fully occupied multifamily building, we had consistency in supply chain from the equipment, the installation methods from the contractors, all the way through to the resident communication pieces. Everything was nice and seamless, and really created a wonderful turnkey experience for the property and the people involved. So for us, it really is about being efficient and effective.
Yeah, I think for us, it's obviously, changed drastically, and, I feel like I'm remembering the past a little bit during this panel, because I remember when we used to, our maintenance guys, we used to convince them, bring all your tools. And there were these companies that would sell these all-in built-in carts, so our maintenance could carry their supply down the hallways or to the units, and so they wouldn't have to go back and forth. But, now with technology, you already have pictures of what the work order looks like. If you have that material in your maintenance shop, you can order it on the fly. You can communicate then with your residents, as it's happening, as they're at work and saying, hey, I'm repairing your faucet. Don't turn your faucet on when you get home. I'm missing one part. And, there could be text messages or emails or whatever the case might be. And they're a lot more efficient, right? They're not going back and forth to the office. And, I remember, many years ago, our maintenance guys, where are they? Oh, they went to, Home Depot, or they went to Lowe's. And now the ability to order online and just get materials, and to make sure that we have parts that we need, and we can kind of, based on our usage, and ensure that we have enough of each product in our maintenance shops as we need it. I know we'll talk a little bit later maybe about predictive, which is a little bit different. I think the question was intended to be a little bit different, but we use that kind of predictive maintenance a little bit as well through this analytics of not what parts, but how often we're buying materials, right? And so that happens in our world today, but the resident experience has completely changed from their ability to communicate. I would say, though, it has been a struggle a little bit, right? Because maintenance personnel are still hard to find in our world today, and getting them to accept that they're having to communicate with our residents via email or text messages. We've had to automate a lot of those kind of back and forth, right? Very simple. Work order is completed. Thank you. Sorry for your inconvenience, or whatever it might be. But I think that we've had to do a lot of training and a lot of convincing to our maintenance personnel that technology is the way we're moving, and it will help them out as well. Yes, it'll make the resident experience better, but I think overall it's also made our people that work for us, our maintenance and maintenance techs, it's made their experience and the working and their ability to do their job a lot better as well. So.
Yeah, I would say that from a portfolio level, it gives us more insight to get real-time information. You can drill down from a portfolio, regional, or site level, and see that the site team is performing, that they're doing what they need to do, they're meeting our standards, and it gives us more ability to reach, to see how our portfolio is performing, but also like Raymond had mentioned, being able to reach the residents and all those other abilities to follow up, and just all those touch points that technology has given us has certainly improved how we manage our properties.
DJ, I saw you now.
I'm good on this one. They hit it.
Great. Well, as Raymond kind of predicted earlier, let's dive into predictive maintenance. I know that's a super hot topic right now, a ton of potential to really kind of change things up. What potential do you guys see as it relates to both the resident and the operator?
I'll answer it quickly on my end. I think obviously for the residents, it would be amazing if we can, avoid incidents occurring, right? Predictively, are there air conditioners that are going to go out, or appliances? And so can we predict those, or can there be communication from those pieces of equipment to our maintenance guys so they can, beat the work order to the punch per se? I would still probably think, it's for mass kind of across the board. I think that's still, a little bit of ways away, especially on appliances, because we still have to manage cost. And obviously, we're still fighting over with some of our owners over $50 on a refrigerator, right? And so bringing that equipment into all the appliances and HVAC systems or whatever, across mass new development is going to be harder to make that pencil out. But yeah, I think that's the direction it's going. I think you've had little pieces of it. You can water detection devices that detect leaks and things like that. I think those are around, and those will be we use quite a bit. But I think from mass kind of control over the entire unit and be predictive over an entire unit is still a little bit away.
Yeah, it certainly is a little ways away, Raymond, but it is coming quickly, particularly in heating and cooling.
Yeah.
Like for us, we see the benefit of, as Raymond said, avoiding that resident putting in a heating and cooling call. So if we can, identify that there's potentially an issue with that unit prior to, a resident noticing, that for us is the right way to go. We've deployed a number of these devices in the built space and in the multifamily and housing space, and are seeing really interesting results in our early tests. Raymond's right; it is early, but this technology is coming very, very quickly, particularly in things that in more complicated categories like HVAC, where it's not just about the thermostat on the wall giving you an indication of system success, but the machines themselves are headed that direction.
And all those it'll help out, right? Sorry, real quick. All those things always occur in a after-hour scenario, right? So to be predictive can only help us out even more. So yes, it's far away, but I think we'll try to push as fast as we can. Sorry.
When Raymond, you mentioned leak detection, and it's not really predictive, but it's accelerated reactive, right? It's catching a leak that's a little bit of a drip, get a work order created, mop up the floor, and you're done, versus a weekend goes by and you've got 3 floors worth of water damage and floors and sheetrock ripping out and all that. And it's amazing. Like the leak detectors we use, they're $30. And it's like the cheapest thing possible you can put in an apartment. And we see them put for the water heater, if there is a washing machine, the sinks, and over 43% of the properties on our platform have had a leak. And I think the real important piece is that then you integrate it, whether it's shutoff valves, if it's the HVAC systems talking to you, it needs to be integrated back into your property management system, into whatever system you use for your work orders, so that work order is created right away. Obviously, it's right up our wheelhouse, but making sure that work order is tied then to a code. So if you have smart locks, the work order is tied to that code, so you know when the maintenance person came in, how long they were there, when they left, the code is killed. So all of that tying into making sure that the apartment stays safe is really important.
It's predictive to a massive emergency, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and CJ, I agree with you. Part of the equation of predictive analytics is getting boots on the ground as soon as possible, right? If you it's not just the ability to detect an issue, but it's the ability to respond to it in a timely fashion that I think is the last mile of the resident experience. If you can get in front of it and something's wrong, and then you can get out and fix it before it becomes a bigger issue, you've definitely won.
Well, we have a really fun algorithm we have in our leak stats that takes into account if there was a leak detected, was it on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 20th floor?
Oh, nice. And
so last month, the potentially affected floors and units was 4,723.
Wow.
So that leak on the 1st floor could be a big problem, but it's one unit's problem. The leak on the 7th floor, now you've got a really, really big problem. And we are seeing like properties like in New York, San Francisco, some of the bigger cities where people have just left during the pandemic, and there's so many open units, vacant units that aren't vacant, they're just non-occupied right now. And if you have something going on in those, whether it's CO2 or it's leaks or whatever, and you don't catch it, like it could be weeks before you realize there's a big problem.
CJ, do you see this as an issue came up this weekend? And it's kind of one of my crazy thoughts here, but do you see that, we call it leak detection devices, but maybe it's a question for Mike as well. Do you see, maybe moisture detection devices built into the building envelopes, right? So some issues don't occur with inside the building?
Well, you can do, there's humidity detection. If you use a certain smart thermostats, you can start checking that as well, which I think you can part of control.
But that's within the living space, right? I'm talking about like within the cavity of the building where, you might have problems behind the walls or, things like that, where the only reason I ask is we have balcony issues right now, and behind the walls might be a question for you guys to develop a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's all part of the age-old battle of, construction costs versus,
Right.
the other costs, assuming one cost to avoid a potential other.
Mhm.
It's just always just a battle, as a maintenance guy, I can appreciate it, but
Right.
that's the tough battle we have every day.
Good luck letting the developers pencil that one out.
Yeah, right.
Well, one of the things that I think some of the higher end buildings are putting in, that every building really should, if you're doing new construction, is not just leak detection, but you should have smart water flow valves, on and off water flow valves. And to do retrofit on that is crazy expensive because you're ripping walls out. But on new construction, it's just something that you should have. I mean, you catch that leak and then immediately the valve shut off. So you still got to go fix it, but at least that water is turned off right away. That's key for new construction.
So I was just thinking about tying our first discussion back to this one. Of course, kind of our most important touch points with residents often include maintenance. Do you guys envision, a need for new touch points with residents without these maintenance discussions? Like, are you guys having to counteract and show other ways that you're providing excellent service to counterbalance that?
We've been, some residents have brought it up, but I think we just we do a good job communicating of what we are doing, and that we are, we're following CDC recommendations, and we're meeting, the standards of what the building industry and mechanical and HVAC industry recommends. So nothing too extreme has been requested or brought up, and we haven't adopted anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, on the heating and cooling side, we get a lot of service calls for air quality. We're now doing thousands of system cleanings a week across our client base, to the point of just it becoming sort of one of these value add services. Hey, we're going to come in and clean your system and make sure it's working and make sure that it's up to snuff. We're seeing more requests for things like UV lights and ionization scrubbers and MERV 13 filters that eliminate or slow the flow of SARS-related viruses, which COVID is one. So, we're seeing sort of a belt and suspenders approach in a number of owners and operators as it relates to indoor air quality and COVID. Hey, maybe if I've got high humidity, I should do UV lights. And if I'm worried about COVID, I need to clean the system and put a MERV filter in. If I'm, in a dry area and I'm worried about, air quality, then maybe I need to be looking at humidification and an ionization system plus a MERV filter. But everything we touch, we make sure that the system is clean. That's kind of the bare minimum, just to make sure that, the system's operating and it's clean before we add any of these other approaches to it. But we're definitely seeing a big increase in preventative maintenance and system cleanings these days. Big increase.
That's really important. I mean, that's the most important piece is to make sure that you're keeping up with your preventative maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Let's dive into data. Of course, that's a huge topic around really any sector right now. How much does asset data have? How much of an impact does asset data have on a capital expenditure planning? And are you seeing more companies embrace data-driven decision-making in a capital expenditure forecast?
I'll start off on that. I mean, this is our everyday conversation with all of our customers, because if you're going to be doing a smart home project, you're looking at anywhere from $600 to $1,200 per unit. So you can do the math. It's not a cheap decision to make, and you have to look at data and whatever your project you're doing. Are you making more money because of it, or are you saving money? And then do your ROI. And you're not going to get decisions made going forward without a true ROI based on real data. The data is there, so you just have to make sure you're either setting your systems up to capture that data. A lot of our customers will dip their toes and do one property, and they'll do the ROI. They'll do the math and say, okay, we think there's a 6.5 year payback on this. And they'll do the property 2 months into the project. They'll kind of look at the numbers, see if they're trending the right way. And if they are, then they start deploying across the portfolio. But they want to see you want to go look at your peers and then take that data, try to apply it to your business, and then match it up to see if your performers are right, and then go deploy. Or not deploy if you're not getting either the savings or the revenue bumps, whatever the project is.
Yeah, we see the same thing in our customer base. It's all about payback of the data. HVAC is an expensive part of the building, and having asset data allows you to really fine tune a capital investment in those systems and make sure you're only replacing the systems that really need it. And when we go through and do these preventative maintenance, we're cataloging the systems and providing those recommendations, similar to CJ. And we've seen owners and operators switch from operational based expenses in HVAC to full capital plans because there's better taxes, it improves NOI. There's just a whole slew of benefits to leveraging data in a capital planning process, particularly around a category like HVAC, where you've got a lot of expensive machines on site.
I mean, I think I agree with both of those points. I think, well, this is being recorded, right? And so this is airing in a few months, or in a month here, but it's, with COVID, I think there's some questions on what is the true NOI on some of these projects, and where are rent projections going, and what are the needs of the residents. So I think from an ownership standpoint, we're kind of in the last 5, 6, 7 months been very careful in launching new things, unless they do things like both of their companies where there's some definite paybacks and there's ability to communicate with residents that we're not able to do, right? It was solving a problem that we had. But as new technology comes on and there's projects, we definitely have to look at the data. And there's still some uncertainties where rents are going, what we can do on evictions, and all those types of things, right? And so data becomes even more important as you're having to handpick which technology you want to go down or which softwares you use. So it's that is uber important.
Yeah, I would, you guys pretty much hit on it. I would just say, I love the data. I mean, getting the data helps us, understand, quantify the value of our investments, and it's, but it comes at a cost, right? So it's convincing ownership to go down that road, and, we're always trying to quantify that expense. So, yeah, I find it extremely valuable.
I think I would recommend to any builders, managers, that you look at the people you're hiring and make sure you have a couple of really good data scientists. Like, it is, the people that I've seen and worked with at other companies that do that job, they're at a whole nother level. Like, I'm good at math, but what they're doing is not math. And trying to make sure that there's somebody on your staffs that can actually take that data and then present it in a way that the leaders can make business decisions.
Yeah.
It is a pretty big, key skill set that I bet a lot of companies don't really have, that they should be looking for.
Yeah, CJ, I agree. We see the same thing. There's a difference between collecting the data to analyzing the data, which is the part that CJ is talking about, to being actionable on the data, which is what you can do after you analyze it. And then finally, you can automate after that. After you know what actions you want to take, you can start to see trends and patterns and move forward. But without that foundational piece that CJ is talking about, you can never get to the automation side, because you just don't have the foundation. So CJ, completely with you there. There are absolute gems in data science, and we work with clients similarly to CJ, where they've got high power data analysts, and they make up their weight in gold for these owners and operators, no doubt about it.
Let's dive into amenities. And I know that's been probably a big buzzword for most real estate media and events for a long time. So what I want to dive into is what amenities are residents actually making the most use of, and which technologies specifically are making an impact on retention, which is what we all really care about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a stab at that. I think for a long time there, amenities, and I'm assuming, James, this is a COVID question, or is it a general question? Because obviously it's a little bit different today than it was a year ago.
COVID, after COVID, right? I mean, right now, retention decisions are probably more based off of COVID. So let's stick with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for a long time there, all of our amenities were pretty much shut down. Our offices were shut down. Our fitness centers, were shut down, and then we started using technology. So then, starting using technology and how residents can schedule working out, how to minimize social distancing in those, and then creating the touch points. Again, we talked about it a little earlier. How do you communicate with our residents? So we've started doing virtual cooking classes, offering virtual yoga classes that our residents can go in and stay in their home and safely. Still we can provide them with these amenities, and you'd be shocked on how many people actually attend virtual cooking classes, and how excited they get over it, right? And so to then taking that point, we've had all these conversations over the last 3 to 5 years and all of our amenities, where, how do we get our people to gather together, right? Creating outdoor kitchen areas, TVs, business centers, or big pool gathering areas with big TVs, or, movie screens and things, all these crazy things that we've done on all of our apartment complexes, and our properties. But now, is that still the same story, right? Do we create these areas and spend the money on all these amenities, or can we do a lot of these virtually and have people use, create maybe better interiors on our units and give them a better cooking station, so we can provide better virtual classes, or little people are now working more from home. Do we used to take the desks out? I remember in the 80s, everyone put desks in the corner, and now we took those out and we created fancy wine racks. And now we're talking about, should we put those desks back in, right? So our amenities now going back into the apartments instead of outside, right? I don't know. I mean, I think technology has helped out a little bit, doing all those things virtually on the amenities. But I still think that let's still wait and see kind of scenario where this pandemic kind of pans out. And do we have to, rebuild some of these amenities? As we don't want people gathering around an outdoor barbecue area anymore, or we don't want 15 people studying together with our, Starbucks coffee bar in our leasing office. So I think it's kind of a wait and see. And how do you then adapt? Maybe it is through technology, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would say I don't think that those amenity spaces will totally disappear, but certainly there's, as we're designing new buildings, there's thought on adopting that, the ability to socially distance, and the, post-COVID way of thinking. But I think that this has forced us to think outside the box, and we've the number of virtual happy hours or virtual wine tastings or different events that we've created to continue to develop that sense of community at our properties without actually gathering together has been something that we've had to do. And I mean, have you ever thought you'd go to a virtual wine tasting prior to COVID? I mean, so I wouldn't have accepted that invitation, but those are things that we do, and residents responded really positively to them.
Well, right when the pandemic hit, we had to shut down retrofits. Like, it was just stop everything right now. We've got 70 guys around the country that do that work on site, and we had about 40,000 units in the queue that are already signed and ready to install. And And a few months ago, we started back up. And a couple of our biggest clients are like, no, we need to get this stuff installed. And we weren't sure what the opt-out rate would be, meaning somebody's like, no, don't put smart tech in my unit. And there was always that person, even before COVID, that, you know, kind of was afraid that Amazon Alexa was listening to everything they were doing all the time. So there were always a few, and then you just take care of that on turn.
Aren't they listening to us, CJ?
They probably are. And I just assume I'm always being listened to now. But they had, as we started to do back on schedule, and MAA was one of the first clients that we really started pushing hard on again, we found we had less opt-out rate. And really the residents were excited that they were getting a smart apartment. And they're like, please come in and put that stuff in, because they're stuck there. You know, they're stuck in their apartment. They're working there all day. And if you can give them new technology to create a better experience, they're jumping all over it. And we have found that residents are buying more of their own stuff to then add on. Like they're buying an Alexa, they're buying a Google Home. And so they're creating scenes when they come into their apartment and all those things. They're making it more of a home because they're there 22 hours a day or more now, instead of, you know, always being gone. And I think that it's the experience in that apartment. I think you're right on, Raymond. It's now, what amenities do you put in there? Because that's where they're spending most of their time.
Yeah, agreed, CJ. We, you know, as an HVAC company, a lot of our stuff's behind the wall, but our resident experience is in the phone. We're seeing everything going here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a smart thermostat, you can sort of envision a day where there's not even a thermostat. You just need this.
Yeah.
So for us, the experience is going, you know, into the cloud, so to speak.
And I'll tell you, it seems silly, but smart light switches. I mean, we're doing a whole bunch more light switches now. There's kind of that one thing where you need an electrician. So it's usually, we're not going to do that. But people just love being able to turn their lights on and off with their phones.
Nice. I know I do.
That's funny. In terms of building management, you know, we know real estate as a whole has been a little bit slow to adopt new technologies, which I think we're finally there. We're making progress. But which aspects of building management do you think are being the slowest to adopt, and what can be done to improve that?
To you, Raymond or Mike.
I would say the first to adopt is front, you know, what I would call front of the house, right? So I mean, anything that's going to get new prospects in the door, and the amenities or the you know, the technologies that residents want or come to expect. Unfortunately, on the facility side, I mean, it's probably the slower of the building functions to adopt, just because it's back of the house, and while it helps us maintain and manage properties better, you know, it's more cost avoidance than revenue increase and lease increase.
Yeah, and I don't know if you agree with it, Mike, but I think that, and I mentioned it earlier, I think it has a lot to do with the end user from maintenance supervisor standpoint.
For sure, yeah.
Their willingness to adapt to it as well. I remember I spoke at a conference a couple of years ago, and kind of was doing industry trends kind of thing, and I was showing the smart thermostats and all smart locks, and I'm talking about some of this, you know, predictive appliances or HVAC systems, and I was mainly talking to maintenance supervisors, and everyone in the room was kind of glazed over. And I'm like, did I lose them? And I kind of stepped off the stage. I'm like, what's wrong? And one person was just honest with me, like, how do we repair all this? Right? And they're terrified of, you know, and they're not understanding this, but they're now saying, holy geez, you're putting in equipment that we just don't know how to prepare. So then when you simply bring up a software, oh, here, you can order your maintenance, you know, your tools or your parts, you know, online, that their willingness to adapt is a lot less. And I think that's where you're seeing that, you know, the more the property managers in the front of the house, where you're dealing with residents, those types of squares and management softwares has been a lot easier to adapt. But when you still can't figure out what percentage of your maintenance supervisors have smartphones to use some of it, I think it becomes an issue. And CJ laughs, right? But I think I asked you a couple months ago, right? And when we talked, I was like, what percentage are you seeing? And are we having to buy smartphones? And then some of our guys, well, you're not putting that on our plan. You don't have those conversations with our front of the house people. But you do with maintenance supervisors for some reason. And so we'll see what happens, but I think they'll get more familiar as more people, everyone in the world has smartphones, and plans become unlimited plans and things like that. I think that will be fine. But we get pushback on the maintenance side, engineers.
Yeah. I wonder
Definitely.
if it's, oh, go ahead, Matthew.
No, go ahead, CJ, please.
I wonder if this will be a turning point for that job. Like, is this the point where we elevate the maintenance person? And with every kind of job, there's going to be the laggards that kind of go away. They eventually retire. But can you hire a more sophisticated maintenance person, because there is now multiple software platforms involved. There's technology in the units, out the units, common areas, and do you need to pay 20% more but get a way more effective, smarter maintenance person, and then you tell the existing ones, like, we're going to educate you and you're going to level up, or we're going to go hire somebody? And that sounds tough.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think also with the technology has given us the opportunity to train better and more effectively than we probably could before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you're taking, like you said, I mean, as the age demographic progresses, we're getting younger and probably more technically in tune associates. We have the capability to train them. So they may not be this, tenured maintenance guy, but they can adapt. And so that, I certainly think it's part of the future, sure.
I think you hit it on the head with training, and I think you have to, the industry as a whole, we've talked about it for a long time. How do you attract maintenance personnel into this industry? And I think it, obviously it starts with pay, but it starts with training and making it a career. And where does that go from? So, I think most of you guys know, but we were recently purchased by Cushman & Wakefield, who manage obviously other buildings besides multifamily, and being able to, it's exciting for me, being able to then take, maintenance tech to have him then become a maintenance supervisor and create a career path that even leads him to being an engineer on one of our, large commercial buildings that we manage. So I think that all of that plays into a big part into creating this job experience for them and getting them comfortable around technology, because it is the way, right? It's not going away. We're going to have smart units. Earlier I asked a question about, do we put moisture detection devices in their envelopes? And then on the other hand, I'm saying, do we even have maintenance guys who can, make those systems work? So, but it's definitely going that direction.
Well, and I think it comes back to the hiring. If you're hiring somebody new, hire for that future person.
Right.
My dad was a blue collar guy. My dad never used an ATM machine. He still thought that they could steal his money. And so that's not the guy you want to go hire for the future job. You want somebody who embraces technology.
Yep.
So clearly technology has expanded a lot. So as technology is expanding, we're getting a whole, plethora of systems that operators and owners can choose from when they're managing their buildings. How should they go about thinking about these? How are you making those decisions? And are you even building your own?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, kind of a few things, but, is it effective? Do you have enough kind of research that, that they sell you? How do you know that it's effective? Is it somewhat affordable compared to what other things you might be trying to do with that asset? And then what's the overall value, right? Is there an NOI? Or, sometimes the softwares are hard to identify the NOI. It's not a pure payback. You just have to, but I think we talked about that earlier with the data guys, and I can really dive into, does that work? But I think just looking at it from that standpoint, we're a little bit different. So I don't know if anyone listening very much like us, we're a fee manager, and CJ and Matthew know this well when they come selling on us, is that, we have hundreds of conversations to have if we want to roll it out in a big platform. So we kind of do a lot more what CJ mentioned earlier, the onesies, twosies here and there, convince one owner, can we test it? which makes it harder, right? I'd rather be able to make the decision. Yes, we're using this software, this kind of technology across the entire portfolio, make that decision. But each owner has a different view on what's their value, or what's affordable, or what's effective. And so we're having to have a lot of conversations. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to have that and to roll something out. But we've been effective. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things: amenities, maintenance, predictive, all of that. We do all of that on a lot of our portfolio. So.
Yeah, I would agree with Raymond. And fortunately, we own most of our stuff, so we are able to avoid some of those difficult conversations. But passing on cost. But I would totally agree. I mean, it comes down to cost and return on the investment, but also integration with our other softwares and products. I mean, you ultimately don't want to have a million different products and softwares that you have to learn and train and all that. So the integration of all of them together is also important, I would say.
I would say, sorry to add on to that, Mike, talking about, I've sat in a sales pitch before, and through technology, they make it just seem the most amazing thing ever. And then you ask them, how many units have you rolled out? And they're like, we haven't yet. We're calling on you first. Pretty much for us, we can't take that risk, right? So, CJ mentioned earlier all his units, and I know Matthew, you guys do a bunch as well. And so I think that having the conversations with the proven and more effective people, because technology comes out every day, right? And there's spin-offs, and there's engineers from one company starting their own, their sales guys starting their own. So I think you have to be very careful, especially companies of Mike and I's size, who you go with, and then blending it, with our other softwares that they talk to each other is majorly important for us.
Yeah.
You don't want to be last, and you don't want to be first.
Exactly.
Yeah, Ray and Mike, you guys are right on the integration side. I mean, more and more we find clients who don't want to use our system other than just using our network and service responses. And we're just taking dispatches from their systems and their platforms and feeding information back and forth. And it's so much more efficient and effective. And it's definitely the way to go. And I think that also is a good, bar of entry if you're trying to limit, the guys with the nice PowerPoint slides, but no meat and potatoes sitting behind it. Ray, to your point, is how many systems do you integrate with? If they're integrating, that means they've got a development team that can handle it. And I think what clients are you working with, and how many units do you have under, you've done services on, is another good metric. Because I know CJ and I can both, we both have substantive numbers and substantive sizes that are, legitimate, but you definitely got to be careful there. There's a lot of tech out there.
Right.
Well, OpTech happening this month, and last year when I was walking OpTech, and I found like 32, I think it was new companies, tech companies that I'd never heard of. Yeah. And the year before they weren't at OpTech. And so that's great. A lot of innovation, but I think if you're looking at software, any technology provider, you also should ask not just their experience in units, and that's super important, but also who's backing the company, what kind of financial resources do they have? If they have a hardware solution as part of their business, kind of like ours, what's your warehouse like? How many units do you have worth of gear in the warehouse? If I bought 10,000 units today, do I get them next week, or do you have to order them from China? And so it's going to be months. Like all of those things, to know that a young company still can answer yes to all those things as long as they're well capitalized. So really that's an important piece to it.
I can't tell you over the last couple of years how many times I've told a technology company, gosh, if you bought that company and that company, the three of you guys would make a perfect company. Right? Because everyone kind of came in with their own little pieces, right? And you're like, oh, so, but I think that's drastically improved over the years, right? But I think that, someone comes in and they're expert in a certain space, right? And then people started adapting and adding things, and that will keep improving as the space, 32 will then come back down to,
Yeah.
I think, normal numbers, CJ, right? As people start adapting and you start going with the bigger players or the more successful players, I should say, don't have to be big, but the successful players in certain categories.
Yeah.
Well, we are right at the end of our time. So I want to thank you all for joining, and I'll welcome Patricia back on.
Awesome. Thank you all to all of our wonderful panelists. I'm giving you a big virtual round of applause. Thank you all so much for sharing with us. All right, if you're looking for your next session, go ahead and check out your agenda to find out where you're headed next. Thanks so much, and we hope you keep having a great time at RETCON.